Late one October evening, three college friends, Tom, Sarah, and Mike, decided to visit the infamous Devil's Tramping Ground in Chatham County, North Carolina. They had heard the stories, of course, but like most, they were skeptical. The legends of barren circles and the devil's nightly walks seemed more like local folklore than anything real. But with Halloween approaching, they couldn't resist the lure of the mysterious sight. They packed some snacks, a couple of tents, and a flashlight, ready to spend a night camping in the woods. After a winding drive through darkened country roads, they finally arrived at the spot. The circle was easy to find, a perfectly round patch of earth where nothing grew. The contrast between the lush forest around them and the desolate circle was striking, almost unnatural. The air seemed colder within the circle, and the three friends exchanged uneasy glances. "Let's set up the tents right in the middle," Mike suggested with a grin, his bravado masking a creeping sense of unease. "We'll prove there's nothing to this old legend." Tom and Sarah agreed, although with less enthusiasm. They pitched their tents, lit a small campfire just outside the circle, and settled in for a night of spooky stories and laughter. As the night deepened, the full moon cast long shadows across the barren earth, making the circle appear even more eerie. Around midnight, the wind began to pick up, howling through the trees. The fire flickered, casting dancing shadows around the campsite. They continued to chat, but something felt off. The usual sounds of the forest, crickets, owls, rustling leaves, had gone silent. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath. Suddenly, Sarah noticed something. "Hey, where's Rex?" she asked, looking around for her dog. The usually playful and curious golden retriever had been with them when they arrived, but now he was nowhere to be seen. "He was here just a minute ago," Tom replied, his voice tinged with concern. "Maybe he wandered off into the woods." They called out for Rex, but there was no response. The only sound was the wind, growing louder, more insistent. A low, unnatural hum seemed to emanate from the ground, vibrating beneath their feet. "I'll go look for him," Mike said, grabbing the flashlight. He ventured into the trees, the beam of light cutting through the darkness. Tom and Sarah waited in tense silence, their eyes fixed on the circle. The wind seemed to push at them from all directions, and the hum grew louder, more disorienting. Minutes passed, and then Mike's voice broke through the silence. "Guys, come here. You need to see this." Tom and Sarah rushed into the woods, following the light of Mike's flashlight. They found him standing just a few yards from the circle, staring down at something on the ground. Rex was there, but he was lying motionless, just outside the circle. His fur stood on end, and his eyes were wide open, but he wasn't moving. It was as if he had been frozen in fear. Sarah knelt beside Rex, but she quickly recoiled, her face pale. He's dead," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Before they could process what had happened, the wind intensified, howling through the trees with a force that sent chills down their spines. The hum in the ground became a rumble, and the earth within the circle began to tremble. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the night, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "What the hell is happening?" Tom shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening noise. Suddenly, the ground within the circle began to stir. The barren earth shifted and swirled, as if something beneath the surface was trying to break free. The friends watched in horror as a dark figure began to rise from the center of the circle, its form indistinct, shrouded in shadows. The air around it seemed to warp, distorting the light from the moon and fire. The figure took shape, growing taller, more defined. It was a man, or at least, it looked like one, draped in tattered black robes, its face obscured by a hood. But where the face should have been, there was only darkness, an endless void that seemed to draw in the light around it. The figure began to move, its steps slow and deliberate, pacing in a circle around the barren ground. The earth trembled with each step, and the wind howled louder, as if the very forest was screaming in fear. The three friends stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. The figure's presence was overwhelming, oppressive, and it felt as if the air itself was being sucked out of their lungs. Then, without warning, the figure stopped. It turned toward them, and though its face was hidden, they could feel its gaze, cold and piercing, as if it was staring directly into their souls. A voice, deep and guttural, echoed in their minds. "You should not have come here," it said, each word dripping with malice. "This is my domain." The ground beneath their feet began to crack, fissures spreading out from the circle like the web of a spider. The trees groaned and creaked, their roots pulling away from the soil. The friends stumbled backward, but it was too late. The ground gave way, and they were swallowed by the earth, their screams lost to the wind. When the morning sun rose, the forest was silent once more. The circle remained, as barren and lifeless as ever, but the tents were gone, the fire extinguished, and there was no sign of the three friends. Only Rex's lifeless body remained, lying just outside the circle, as if he had tried to escape but couldn't quite make it. The locals found the dog later that day, but the friends were never seen again. The legend of the Devil's Tramping Ground grew stronger, with warnings never to disturb the circle, never to camp there, and never to challenge whatever dark force resided within. For those who did were never heard from again, their fate sealed by the devil himself, forever lost in the depths of his tramping ground.